You're tuned into the God Stories Radio Podcast. www.godstoriesradio.com.
And welcome to God Stories Radio. This is session 25. I'm Fritz.
I'm Mike.
It's been a crazy week, Mike.
It has. And it's been a little bit since we've had a session.
I know it. I'm glad to be back.
Oh, me too. Right in front of this mic.
You know, I'm proud of us this week, Mike, because it seems like we've, since we've taken on God Stories Radio, the responsibility of it, and since we've really hunkered down and got serious at Real Men, that the old slewfoot there's been nagging at us.
Yep.
And when you and I talked last night, I mean, he will take just the smallest of things and blow them up and just try to destroy friendships. And
absolutely.
And, man, I was just proud of us.
Yeah.
I was proud of the way we handled that little situation, and we got over it.
Got over it.
Yeah.
Better than ever.
How's things at work?
Work is work.
Riding the wave.
Riding the wave, yes.
I'm adopted that saying.
Yeah, really ride the
that.
wave. But, something happened this week. I spoke to, said it at our group last night, that I was introduced to this book, The Power of a Praying Husband. And I started reading it, and I was in a chapter, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6, and in the author had said that you can basically go to God and say, basically, to let me know you're still there. Can you do something to let me still there? And I thought about that, and I know I have faith. I have strong faith, and to me that was kind of like that's saying that you don't if you do that. But so I did, and within hours, this was at night. The next day, one of the guys in our group sends a text every single day, and the text is a verse. And every single day a verse. And it just so happened, maybe 8-10 hours after I talked and prayed to God that night and said that, it came through and was not a verse. It was just him thanking me for being the leader in the group and the stuff that I have helped him through, and that I'm there. God put me there to be a comfort to others, and that was just, as you would say, threw me a bone. And then about 2 hours after I got that text, I went to another friend of mine who works at a store, and he saw me and he says, Mike, last night was burdened my heart. I was thinking about you, and I started talking to God about you because you love the Lord, and you're trying to do everything He's letting you know or what wants you to do, and why is it taking so long for that God's gracious gift to come along? And he was, how do you want to say it? He was partitioning God for me. And I would say that was my second bone, because he said that night, the night I was talking to God about that, he probably at the same time burdened to start talking to God for me. I'm wowed. I am. Shows up and shows off all the time.
Trish, how are you doing? How's your week this week?
My week's been awesome. It started with the Karen Williams concert. You were there. I saw you in the cage.
That women's event was off the hook.
Wasn't it?
That's really all I can say about that.
You see how we women get together?
I got to participate in that. And I didn't realize her husband wrote the Buckaroo country song.
Oh, so that was a treat. Karen Williams, she's a Christian artist. She's actually from Winter Park, which is... it was really cool because I just finished my final exams at Rollins College in Winter Park. Go see her in concert. She's from Winter Park, so we were some Winter Park girls up in the house representing. She offered to give us a music bed, too, for our show.
I want to take her up on that.
Me too.
Like what we use our intro music and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it's a piece that she wrote and that she asked if you would consider using it.
It's called Ordinary Angels. And we were talking about testimonies and all that good stuff.
And she even said that she would be willing to maybe give her testimony via Skype. Or
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she could be the first.
Because I tried to be there too, and they didn't need me that night. So I was
you should have showed up and hung out backstage.
I should have showed up and helped you push some buttons.
And so, what do you mean I'm not supposed to be here?
I got to play drums in the band. So
you did?
Yeah, he was on drums.
Okay. Yeah.
So I couldn't hang out with you, be on the stage in the band, behind that partition for the drums. But I tried to be there as I usually am for backstage, and they had somebody else already in on that. So, isn't her father the owner of the
Magic, the Orlando Magic, right? Oh, and that was the other amazing thing. She has 18 brothers and sisters. She said she's just happy to be anywhere alone, just some alone time. And I think 14 of the siblings are all adopted from other parts of the world. So there's like 5 homegrown biological kids, and then 14 adopted from all over the world. She just has an amazing story.
Well, speaking of amazing stories, tell us who we have tonight.
Yes.
We have a very dear friend of mine, Tamara. I talked to you guys about her before. She is legally blind. Am I saying it right?
Yes, I'm legally blind, but I have partial sight, so I do see some.
Because I had said before that she was blind,
right.
And she's like, I'm
but
not blind.
You did say legally blind before as well. And I know what that means, yeah.
Well, see, blindness to a lot of people, I mean, it doesn't necessarily say a whole lot, because when people think of blindness, they just think of black, darkness. Right. And people can be legally blind and see different images, shapes, shadows, colors. Some people don't see a lot of detail. So the terms are there so people can qualify for services, like whether you have to go on permanent disability or you need some type of accommodations in college or school or what have you not for programs. Terminology can be somewhat confusing, but I am blessed that I do have some sight, yes.
Okay. And I wanted to say, too, I met her originally through, there's a program that we're both involved in because I have a daughter that has vision issues. The way that we met was through the Moms of Preschoolers group. And I wanted to say if there's any new moms out there, or if you're pregnant, they'll take you pregnant. And you go to these groups until I think the child is 4 years old or kindergarten. And it's like a mom's morning out. Every other week you get together with other moms and you share different, mothering tips, and we give each other clothes and hand-me-downs and...
Right, you're referring to MOPS, though, when you're talking about that, correct?
Yeah, Moms of Preschoolers. Yeah.
And you can find MOPS just about in just about any church. I know Real Life does it. The First United Methodist Church of Claremont does it. You just need to look under ministries at your churches, and you can find those types of outreach programs that service women and children.
Yeah, MOPS International, I think you can find them online.
As well, yes.
So anyway, that's where Tamara and I met, was from the Moms group.
And then we found out, ironically, that we also had another connection without ever having met. I think I missed the first session, and then I made the second session, and I think Trish can correct me if I'm wrong, but she made the third session, and all the tables were pretty much full, but the table that I was placed at was the head table with the group leader, so I thought that was pretty cool because I didn't know anybody going, and we still had like a couple chairs left, and I think Trish was hoping to get placed at a table where she might have known one or two people, and God had put her at my table, and as we chatted, that's the ironic part, we found out that we both had children that were in the program for New Vision for Independence that works with children from infancy all the way to the elderly to help them have an independent life. So they make sure you don't fall behind emotionally, physically, developmentally.
They guide you through the schools.
You have developmental skills to be prepared for school, at least for the babies and toddler program. They work with you till you get to about school age, and then they're right now branching out their organization to service children that right now are in the school system, because the school system tries to also provide additional services there. It's like one of those catch-22s. You don't want to step on the school's toes, but yet a lot of families do need extra additional help. Like for me, as instance, like I'm, as I said earlier, legally blind, and my son is also inherited my vision through pregnancy because I didn't know it could be carried on. And I didn't even know until I had him that my vision came from genetics. I had a severe skull fracture at 3 weeks old and fell out of a shopping cart head first and wasn't expected to live. And the outcome for every scenario my mom was given: do surgery, she'll probably die; do nothing, she'll probably die; do this, well, she might be retarded if she lives. And so my mom just prayed and did nothing, and I have a vision problem. So that's what we thought, It was just probably from the fall, because nobody could say, because I was such a tiny, tiny baby. Had my son, I had mentioned to the pediatrician that I had these vision issues, and so she was really attentive with my son and noticed things early on that might have been self-correcting, like, rapid eye movement and different little things. And so we got referred out to an eye doctor right away, and we found out that he indeed had cataracts, premature macula, and his vision was definitely impaired. But he sees better than I do because of the advancements of medicine. What a blessing. And there are so many things that, in my scenario, having the skull fracture and, treatment not being what it is today with the advancements of medicine, that I didn't benefit that way. When I was a child, my mom had, gotten divorced. I had 2 older brothers, and my family decided that, we didn't need to really talk about my vision being different, that I was just a normal kid, like no other kid, everybody was the same. Just go out there, live life, experience it to the fullest. So it was a blessing that my mom didn't have fear of letting me explore my world. When I went through life like every other kid, I thought I was normal, quote unquote, whatever normal means. When I entered elementary school, I was chastised by teachers, by children, peers. I guess you'd say peers versus children. It just like, you're different. Everybody had to point out, because when I go to read, I have to put things 2 inches away from my nose. So there's no way I can hide it. It's like right there.
Me and Mikey do that now.
Yeah, but so, I thought, well, doesn't everybody see like this? Because no one ever told me I was different. That really affected how I felt about myself and how I developed a self-image. My mom believed in God, but we weren't practicing in our home. We didn't go to a church, but maybe on Christmas service or Easter. Creasters, yes. And growing up, I just didn't have a Christian-based stance. I didn't have a foundation. I didn't have anything to draw off of. And so God periodically put different kids in my life that would share things about God, and those were like little baby seeds, and I got to hear about God and how miraculous His love was and the gifts that He did for people, whether He healed people or brought people through difficult and hard times. And the funny thing about being a child is you don't yet have the reasoning and cognitive ability to discern, because children don't. You can't discern things like, why does God heal some people and not heal others? What does it mean to be different? To explain that to a child, it's like children are so into self. Just like when you become a teenager, you identify with your peer group because that's really your whole world outside of your parents. Like I said, I just thought, hey, I'm like you, and I'm not. And so the more I got into school, I saw what my vision problems were like. I couldn't see the chalkboard ever. I had to listen. If you can imagine closing your eyes and doing math from people saying, and X equals Y equals Z, and you're like, huh? My learning became affected because when I was born in the late 60s, and went through school early 70s, elementary, it was not okay and socially acceptable to have any kind of disability. There wasn't the Americans with Disabilities Act. Educators were not educated on how to emotionally, physically, and developmentally meet the needs of children. So when I sat through my IEP meetings, it was just like I sat there and it was like, well, you're stupid, you're dumb, you're blind, you're not going to be anything. And it was like, that had nothing to do with my academics, but there was no expectation for me to succeed because people like me or people that are disabled should be locked away and somebody should take care of them, and they should not strive to be more or have more. And so I grew up with this constant message. So when I had state represented vision teachers that would come in and listen in these meetings with me, they would always pull me aside after the meetings and say, oh my gosh, you're a child and yet you amaze me because you sit there and you don't fight with these people and you turn around and you make them all look, pardon the expression, we tell our son not to say this, stupid, because they'll say I can't do something and I'll be like, okay, so I can't do it. Well, guess what? Where there's a will, there's a way. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to accomplish it. And so even if I did things this differently, the same thing, but I did it differently, I got the same outcome. I just had to go through more trial and errors and struggles. As God continued to plant seeds throughout my life, I got to experience church and different things with friends, but never really stuck with it because as a child, I was angry. I was so mad at God. I was just beyond words. How could a loving, caring, giving God allow people in my life throughout my whole life to tell me I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I'm never going to be anything, I'm not worth love, I'm not this, I'm not that? I mean, what does a child do with that doesn't have the cognitive ability or discernment to separate that, to put it somewhere, to departmentalize it, to whatever? I almost needed like a shredder to take all that information and shred it.
I was going to say trash it.
Trash it, exactly. Hit the delete button. Yeah. So that really shaped my heart. So I was really angry at God because when people would say, well, God can heal you, and then I'd listen to like certain programs on TV or the radio, like Christian television or this or that, and they'd be like, and if you just believe, God will heal you. And I'd be like, okay, God, here I am. Fix me. I'm ready. I want to be like my peers. Fix me. And, of course, nothing ever happened. So it just boosted up that anger. And that's what Satan wanted. Because Satan had me right there because I didn't know enough. I was not a Christian. I had not given my heart to God. I had not read a Bible. Reading was very difficult, very hard for me. Because as I tried to read, I would see each letter before I'd see the word. So my processing was much slower as I would read. And that Bible's pretty thick. And it has a lot of wonderful information, so I'm not downing the Bible. But I don't think at the time Bibles on tape were a big thing back in the 70s. They are now. But even if you have to go back and rewind a tape to find verses and chapters in a Bible, it is still very difficult. As I had these seeds planted, like I said, from friends that would come into my life, I just kept saying, okay, well, God, I'm going to do it my way because my way is going to be better. I'm going to find a way to not let people hurt me anymore. I'm going to build the biggest wall. And I'm going to go through my life, and I don't care what it takes, what I have to do. I'm just going to do what I got to do. And so I lived that way, not realizing that, the anger really had prevented me from experiencing a lot in life. So when I was in my early 20s, God sent me a best friend. She was the one to bring in the harvest. She sat down with me and I just told her, God doesn't love me. She's like, yes, he does. You want to bet? You prove it to me. Now, right now, you go ahead. You prove it. How does God love me? She whipped out that Bible. For every negative thing I had to say, she had verses. I'd say, well, I don't fit in. I'm this, I'm that. And she could just find scriptures to show me that God had a plan for my life, that God doesn't make mistakes. Where there's a will, there's a way. And since you don't know where God is taking you and what his mission for your life is, you have no idea. I can't remember it so far back to all the things we said, but we did it for hours. We just went through every piece of anger I had. And finally I was so exhausted, and then she left and went home. And it happened to be Easter Sunday. Woo, and I turned on the Christian Network because it happened to be the channel that was on the station when I turned on the TV. And they put Jesus on the cross, and I fell to my knees, and I couldn't stop crying. And I said, I get it, God. I'm yours. No one can define my value but you. And I realized from that point that I had lived of the world. I had not lived of Jesus. And what the world had fed me were lies. Lies. And what Jesus' message was love, redemption, peace, forgiveness, healing, a new beginning. There's a funny saying about, like, we're all part of the body of Christ. Well, maybe in the body of Christ, I'm not the eyes to see, I'm not the visionary, but I might be the heart behind it or whatever, because we all function better as a whole together because we were never meant to be alone. So as I was a baby Christian and began to learn my walk and what God would to do with me, I saw all these mature Christians, and they were getting all their prayers answered and all this stuff, and I was still mesmerized by God and all of his glory. And I'm like, I wanted to, like our children, when we take them to the store, Walmart or something, Mom, you buy me this toy, I want this, get me this. And I was that way with God. God, I want this. I don't care how she did it, I don't care what she did to get it, I want it now and I need to have it. And thank God for unanswered prayers. Because I didn't have the maturity, I wasn't ready for it, and God had to take me on a journey. And my journey basically was, once I accepted him, to find out what God had in store. No one in my family had ever gone to college. I was the first, and I was the only one with a disability. And God said, guess where you're going? You're going to college. I'm like, really? Okay. So here I went to college, and I enrolled in community college. And I'll never forget one particular experience with one of my professors, because as I was sitting there in class, it was a grammar class, English lit with grammar and vocabulary and all these things, which that's very visual. I worked so hard, and I tried, and I put so much effort, and everybody just loved the fact that I had determination and I had drive and that I didn't stop. But when my grammar teacher pulled me aside, or English teacher, and said to me, why don't you use commas and periods? So I'm like, well, what's a period? I had made it through my whole education without knowing punctuation because I couldn't see it. Nobody thought it was worth their time to explain a period means you stop when you read a sentence. And all these things. And when my teacher heard that, she broke down crying because she was like, she could not imagine. I think I took grammar, literature, English, whatever it was called back then at community college, like 3 times. But I got it, and I learned everything they didn't teach me in school. And I think that blew her mind because she knew I was going to go somewhere. And that's pretty much how I handled college. I just told people what I was going to do. I told people when I was, just starting out, I want to be a paramedic. What? You can't even drive. What do you want to be a paramedic for? Because I want to help people. And I just was drawn to that profession. I wanted to be a paramedic when I first had my ambitions to enter college, and I thought, well, that'd be cool. And everybody's like, well, you can't drive. What do you mean you want to be a paramedic? And I'm like, I just want to help people. And I was just so drawn to that field. Well, they made me research it, and I went out and I researched it. I realized there was a way to do it. They have certain ambulances that will have 3 paramedics, so then that way you can eliminate yourself from being a driver, but there would still be other physical obstacles to overcome. So for whatever reason, God had gently helped guide me away from that choice, and then I wanted to be a nurse. Can you imagine another visual, very visual field? Because you give medicine, you have to assess injuries, you have to do a lot of things with your eyes. And that's the message there. I wanted to do everything a fully sighted person could do, because it was like I was torn as a child. If I wanted to succeed, I was told I have to be sighted. And if I'm sighted, I can make it. If I choose to be blind or a person that needs help, I will not succeed. So even though I'd accepted Christ, I was like an onion. I had so many layers that weren't healed there. So I didn't understand that, why I was still picking these things. Not that I couldn't have maybe done it, because I was a CNA in a hospital. I worked in nursing homes as a CNA. I had done a lot of things, and I probably could have done it. But when I was in my nursing program, I had a professor that basically behind closed doors told me, I'm going to make you fail. Nobody like you has any business in nursing. And because I had a funding source through Department of Vision Services, I had to maintain a C average. And so I did a lot of praying to God. What do I do? You know, do I fight this? And God had to show me there that that was not a fight to take. That it was more important to get the education and let Him take me to where I needed to go. So I pursued social work. So I became a medical social worker. And that's where God took me. So I went on to complete my community college, get my bachelor's degree. And even in my bachelor's program, I had also another one of those moments with an admission counselor. I had no idea I was going to go to graduate school, but I had to go to graduate school to be a medical social worker. And so I had to write an admission essay. And so this guidance counselor or admission counselor, I'm not sure what she was, at the bachelor's level said, you know, she could sit down and help me with my paper to write it. And sure enough, I wrote it. If it's no surprise to anybody, what I wrote made no sense. It was like not knowing periods and commas. My thoughts were all disheveled. They were all out of place. Things didn't flow like they should for the level of education that I was pursuing. And she looked at me and said, "You're a mess. How in the heck did you even get in college?" I was dumbfounded. I was beyond, wow, God, you brought me here again. Another negative experience. Why am I here? And so I left that meeting just feeling really just down about it. And God said, no, you're going to go back there and you're going to educate her to who you really are. So I went back in that office, just like I'm in this room with you all tonight. And I just started talking. And a person with a vision problem, if they can do anything well, they can talk. And boy, I had a lot to say. So when I told her what I was all about and what my purpose was, I blew her right out of the water, and she broke down crying and said, I judged you so unfairly. I'm going to help you write this paper, and you're going to get into graduate school. Because people need to see beyond the words. You're never probably going to come across great written, but man, verbally you rock. You do it. And I was like, wow. I've since gotten better. I do write much better now, but in my beginning of my journey, I did not. And
now you write a blog.
And now I write a blog for New Vision to help other moms who have children with vision problems or other adults that are facing vision issues, because like I said, New Vision services people of all ages. And it's a free community service, and you don't have to be blind or legally blind. You can just have a vision problem that impairs your quality of life, and they will find a way to work with you and make life easier. If
they
at all
make
possible.
life so much easier.
But getting back to where I was going after that, so I basically went to graduate school. God just said, you know, there's lots of stuff for me to teach you since I didn't have a great foundation. And I didn't read the Bible very fluently and this and that. He had to show me that you believe and you have trust. So we're going to teach you trust and faith. And you're going to go through some things that you physically cannot overcome. And I will deliver. And I'm like, huh? Okay. So remember, we had this one book we had to read, and you had to skim through it to find answers, and I can't skim. And the book was like 300 pages, and we had like less than 24 hours to do it. And I couldn't read the whole book. I mean, I was maybe at page 50. And we had to have it down by like, you know, the next day. And I was pulling an all-nighter, and I had people to show up at my door. well, I read the middle section of the book, and I got the end, and I got this, and let's sit down and talk about the book. So that's what we did. I had, trouble with test taking, and certain professors that didn't understand, that wanted to categorize blind people in one block, and if you were blind, everybody had to function the same, and I didn't. I had other issues because I didn't realize that my traumatic skull fracture as a baby had damaged my brain until I was in graduate school, because I went for further testing with a lady who was, I'm not sure what her title was, but she was like a counselor, but she focused on brain injury and learning disabilities. And I said, I have all these problems, and certain professors don't understand why I can't keep my eyes open, and why my certain parts of my brain get over flooded with information, and I can't focus, and I have this or I have that. She did all these tests on me, and she says, your left and right hemisphere, you have one side of your hemisphere is voided out, and everything is rewired to the other side, and that affects what part of your brain does what functions. And so I learned a lot about myself, and like I said, God took me through all these trials and tribulations to show me faith, to show me that He had a plan. And the cool part was, when I became a medical social worker, I didn't realize that it was a ministry, because I ended up working, which was a blessing, with cancer patients and dialysis patients. And I'll never forget, as I did that job, it was so hard because there was so much paperwork. And when I'd go make my rounds on the floor in the clinic where people would be hooked up to dialysis, I would have to do assessments. So I'd be like having the paper 2 inches away from my nose so I could fill it out. And I'll never forget this one particular patient. He was a rough-looking gentleman, had dreadlocks. He had a very hard life. He was probably on SSI and didn't have much in the means to provide him a very comfortable life. But he struggled, but he was a good man. But people couldn't see through his exterior, because he had some anger issues too, because it's not fun to deal with a terminal illness. And so I sat in front of him, and everybody says, oh, you don't want to talk to that patient. He ain't going to talk to you. Well, I got to talk to him. So I sat down, and as I had that paper in front of my face, and I'm struggling, he just could not, he was fixated on me. He probably had very limited education, and he finally said, look, that's not right. Give me the paper. I'll write, you talk. I'm like, no, I can really write. No, all right, you talk. And because I was like, I wasn't perfect to this gentleman. I was broken. I was not whole. I was me. And he was like, you aren't the typical nurse or doctor or social worker sitting up there with a nice fancy suit and an uppity attitude, and I'm this and I'm that, and let me tell you how to live your life and what you're doing wrong with your treatment, and you're so bad. And I'm like, wow, God, really? And so I changed his life, because then he took his small amount of money, I think it was like $500 and something a month, because he had to fight with some of the staff, the dialysis center, some mixed communication. He had been labeled just an aggressive patient, and he went out and bought us all lunch with his disability money, which probably took half of his money to go do it. But he was forever changed, and he became the nicest, most compliant patient because somebody showed him kindness. And, you look at his appearance, and, it might be wrong to say this on radio, but you might walk away from him because he looked scary.
No, that's just reality.
But it was still humbling. And then I had another dialysis patient, which was another experience that I'll never forget. He, all my patients just admired me, I guess. They'd be like, because I take my work home and I do whatever it took to get the job done. And I always ran around, and I was bebopping and happy and just so glad to be there. One of my patients looked at me, and he's just like, wow, you're so busy and you have so much to do, and you always make time to talk to all of us. You always want to ask us, how was our week? How was our day? What's going on with us? Besides all the work you have to ask us questions on to know what resources and services we might need. And he says, I just got to ask a question. I'm like, sure, shoot, go ahead. He goes, why are you so happy? I don't know. I mean, I have a lot to be thankful for. I've got God in my life. I got a great job. I'm doing things with my life as a single person at the time. I was single that I wasn't supposed to do. I said, I just have so much to be grateful for. And he goes, wow. He goes, I like that you have so much joy, and I really want that. I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, well, I just don't know how to get it. I'm like, okay. And he was saying, well, I have a son that's, becoming a minister, and, my family keep badgering me that I need to accept God, and I just need to get busy and get it done. But, I'm just not completely right with it, So, like, how do you handle all the stressors in your life? And how does it make it right? And I said, this has been my slogan throughout my whole life. Through God, all things are possible. Because I went through so many experiences throughout my life. He was like, wow. He was like, okay. He says, now if I want God, because he didn't want to go home and talk to his family about it, what do I do? I said, it's really easy. You just have to, and I prayed with him. I said, you just have to say, Jesus, please come into my heart. I'm your child. Forever save me and change my life. I'm yours. He went home that night and did that in front of his family, and he died. Wow. That same night.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
And if I wouldn't have been there that day, I might not have been able to be a social worker as long as I wanted, because my vision then got worse, and I had to have corneal transplants, and I had to apply the lessons I had to teach my terminally ill patients, that when your life changes dramatically, you have to make lifestyle choices and changes. And sometimes we don't get to stay in the workforce. Not because we're not capable, because it's not healthy for our bodies, because we need to take care of what we need for a treatment regime to keep us alive and healthy and well. And it's hard to teach that and then do it yourself, because it's what you got to do. And I just think that for all those patients that I had that kind of impact on, that just found God, that was a blessing. But if I can just backtrack, I just had one thing I really wanted to share that God had put on my heart. I don't want to talk in circles to everybody, but one really defining moment going back to the college days is when I finished my master's program. I really, really was excited about being a social worker. I had, like every college graduate, I had so much anticipation. I put out all these resumes, and I told people about my vision, up front. Here I am. I put it all on the table. This is what I am. This is what I'm all about. I don't see well. But this and I that, and I just put it all out there. So there's no surprises. So if you want me, you take the vision, you take the whole package, it's kit and caboodle, and let's go. And a lot of people didn't take me. Had people that took me, and then they realized they had too many issues of their own, and they discriminated against me and put more scars there. Never really understood that. So I kind of thought, well, God, I need to figure out how to not let people hurt me. I kept going back to that, and it just wasn't what he wanted to say to me. So I ended up getting to go on a mission trip, because I didn't grow up in a church. I never got to do that as a youth. And so I went to Russia, and that was really an amazing experience. And I got to learn there that we're all the same no matter what country we live in. That our social, economic factors, all those things, we're all the same people. We just have different situations in which we live. Some countries have more wealth than others, and different trials and tribulations, but that doesn't make us different, because if we all went to war today, we're all the same. We're all brothers and sisters in Christ. My minister's wife went to take me on some interviews, and I was really excited. And I went in there with my gung-ho attitude, and I told him about my vision and all this stuff. And the lady just said, why, she was really bold and told me, well, I just don't think I'd hire you anyways. But otherwise, you look good, but I just don't think I'd do it. And so I was really mad. So when I went to lunch with the minister's wife, right, we're all sitting there in an open deli in a grocery store where they had tables in the grocery store where you could sit and have lunch. And I'm all telling her, I am so mad. Why won't people give me a chance? And why do these doors keep getting shut in my face? And I'm mad. And, and she wasn't getting it because she had not had a lot of exposure with people with disabilities. And I thought, my God, you're a minister's wife. You should know everything about God and people and everything, and how could you not know? And my face is getting all beet red like I was in speech class, and I was just like shaking my hand up in the air going, okay, God, if you really care, you're going to fix this and blah, blah. So I was all venting at God saying, and you might as well send a lightning bolt down here too. And, she's my minister's wife, so sitting there just like, okay, calm down. And, we talked about it, and then all of a sudden this woman out of nowhere, who was also there having lunch, handed the minister's wife this piece of paper. And I have it at home. I should have brought it, but it was written in red ink. And it said, excuse me, but I could not help but overhear your conversation. You appear to be an attractive and lovely woman. And although your struggles in life are unfair and unjust, I salute you for going forward and opening doors in life that would otherwise be shut for other visually impaired and blind people. By the way, I have a 3-year-old daughter with cancer and who is also blind. Who was the blessing, me or that lady who sent that anonymous note? Because, we always say we don't want to be caught by our pastors having a meltdown where we're not being very godly. Because that's our biggest fear as Christians is we don't want to come out of our comfort zone and lose it because we have to represent God. But we all have those moments. And I had my moment in public. And like I said, I don't know who was the blessing, me or that anonymous woman who took the time out to tell me, if you didn't have the ability to tell people I can do it, and you didn't have the tenacity to continue to open doors, put yourself in careers, fields, jobs, other people would never get to pursue that. I didn't think of myself as like a Helen Keller, but it was just humbling. And so that's really what my purpose that God had for me was, just to live my life, to glorify Him. I didn't need to be fixed. I didn't need to be healed. I just needed to love the Lord with all my heart and soul because I was His. And He doesn't make mistakes. He makes all things perfect through His love and His image. Mm-hmm. Because as you live life, it doesn't matter if you come out with a disability or you get one later in life, or you have a learning disability or you don't, because none of us are perfect. That's the beauty of being part of the family of God, is we were never ever meant to be alone. We were meant to be whole together with like-minded people. I had always wanted, very early on in life as a teenager, young adult, like, let me have a family, let me have kids. That was one of the things, thank God for unanswered prayers, because I could not have done college and had a family and had kids. I could barely do college, but I wanted it, and I'm glad God said no. And so when God finally gave me a husband and 2 beautiful children, I was losing my vision again. And I never thought I would lose my vision, because my vision, although it was impaired, had stayed stable throughout my life until the very end of my career that came to a sudden halt. And it was hard for me, because when I left the workforce, all my purpose and meaning was gone. Because I served God through my job, through the way I lived. And now I was in a house. And who's going to see me in my house? Well, besides the kids, the cat, whatever. But, who's really going to see me? And the hard thing about having a vision problem when you can't get out and go when you want to go is you're isolated. Because my husband would go to work, and when you have kids, nobody likes to pack up the diaper bag and 20 million things and rush out to go do nothing necessarily just to get out of the house. Daily living was hard for me because I had to add in the element of a new treatment regime, trying to take care of my sight and children and everything. And it was hard, but God needed me to have grown up as a Christian. He needed me to be more stable in my life before He could give me that blessing. And then, when I had my first child, my son, and he ended up having my eyes, I was beside myself. I was actually, when I got the news, I could not cope. I could not function with that. And my mom saying, you can do this, and I'm like, but I'm not you, Mom. My mom is an amazing woman. She had so much strength. If I wanted to do something, she would support it to the 5th degree, that it would just be done. If people gave me too much flack, she would find a way to undo that and find a loophole. And I'm like, how can I raise a child with a vision disability? What am I going to do? What do I even have to offer? And then I was quickly reminded by family and friends as I was in my pity party, as you call it, which as Christians do go through. Why me, God? Well, why anybody? And family and friends quickly reminded me that who better to teach your son about what it means to not see well and all the things you've experienced and lived. Who better to understand what he will experience and go through? And that was amazing because that helped get me out of that pity party, so thank God I didn't stay there long. Somebody introduced me to New Vision, a lady who's no longer with us. She went home to be with the Lord a couple years ago. And met her at the gym where I worked out. She told me about this brand new program starting for babies and children. And my son was probably one of the first kids in that program. I was with New Vision. My son was with them, I should say, for a couple years. And then God had lit a fire in me again. Because, when we walk with God, I've been with him for 23 years, you go through lulls, like where things are calm and you don't really feel like God's doing much with you, and then you go through these spikes of, oh my gosh, so much energy and so much drive and purpose and meaning and where we're going. And so he lit that fire back because I wasn't really happy because I was so isolated. The only time I could get out is if a friend came over and took me, or if my husband would take me places. And I kept saying, honey, I want to get away from you and the kids. And when you take me somewhere and you wait for me, you're still there. It doesn't work. I said, I want independence. And so I finally said to New Vision, teach me how to cross streets again. Because when I was a teenager, they tried to teach me, not New Vision, but the agency back then in my life, tried to teach me that. But see, when you're a teenager, you don't want to identify a white cane as being who you are. I was not blind. I was not going to be blind as a teenager, and I was going to fit in with my peers at any cost. And so they taught me recently how to use a cane. And when we moved in Lake County, we moved somewhere else again.
Isolated.
Well, no, not isolated now. Where I used to live, I was isolated. We moved where I'm not isolated. I can get to shopping and things now. But I wanted to learn to have mobility. So anyhow, as I pursued that for myself, I guess that's my thought. But as I pursued that for myself, they had just passed an ordinance with the school systems that they got rid of courtesy busing. So now I had to cross 6 and 8 lane highways because it was my responsibility as the only parent home to get my child to school. I said, what the heck? You're going to put a blind mother in an intersection, a highway, to cross roads with a kindergartner and a baby. How do I do that? Please, somebody tell me how I do that. So I made the paper. I made the Orlando Sentinel. So I had to put those social work skills back to use. And the school system and myself sat down. We got it all worked out, and I didn't have to do that. But for a while there, it was looking like I was. And my mobility training was scheduled to start like middle of September, and school was already in session. So like, this does not help me. I found my freedom and my sense of self again as I went out there and I learned to use a cane, because I have a healthy relationship with that white cane. That cane now tells people that, hey, I need help. And it's okay to need help, because all of us Christians, we need help. God never said, go out into the world and suffer and be in pain and live it and no one help you. For me, it was just awesome, because like when I use this cane, people see me now and they actually are more courteous and they treat me differently, and I have a sense of pride, and I'm happy to report I am crossing those 6 and 8 lane highways. It's still scary, but I live life to the fullest, because I know when it's my time to go home, God's going to take me home, and I don't fear what could happen, because life is scary. Whether you drive, whether you don't drive, whether you see, whether you don't see. And my son said to me, Mommy, I hope I can learn to use a cane just like you. He doesn't need to use a cane right now in his life because he sees better than I do. But what a nice blessing for him to have said that to me. That he was so proud of me because I was using a device that enabled me to function with
More
safety and ease, rather than being hung up on who I was and what I looked like and how I fit into the world. And, I really feel like as Christians, we have to learn that we aren't of the world. We live in a world of sin. We're all part of sin. That doesn't make us bad. But it's what you do with your life. Because where you start is not where you finish. As long as you have your heart open to God and you live and you try, God will never forsake you. He will never leave you. And my favorite saying is, through all things are possible through Jesus Christ who strengthens us. All things are possible, even the impossible. And what one Christian has, you have to remember, they paid a certain price to get to that point in their journey. And that might not be the journey that God wants you on. And if you took that journey, it doesn't mean that you can't find grace or forgiveness. But you miss the boat because God has a special plan. I can't emphasize that enough. God has a special plan for every life. No one was brought into this world by accident. Everybody has a purpose and a plan, and we all fit into the body of Christ. We just have to figure out who we are and what we were meant to do. Like my mom, like I said, she always believed in God, and we went to, church on
Christmas and Easter.
Yes, Christmas and Easter. But through all the trials and tribulations I went through, right, my mom came to find God in her heart and is a strong, devout Christian, has said I've changed her life forever by just living my life to the capacity that I have just by witnessing what God has done and continues to do. Because when I was in graduate school, I was under so much stress because it was physically too hard for me to be in graduate school. And I was doing it like a sighted student. 2 years. No accommodations, everything. I was just doing it. I had hit so much stress, I had a mind freeze. I couldn't write my term paper. I just mentally had lost it. And so my mom, I was on the other side of the state. This is when I lived in Washington She drove 4 hours up to college to come and get me and pack me up and take me home because I literally had lost it. I had mental freeze. I couldn't function. I just was like, the block was so there. She was withdrawing me from school because she was freaked out. She'd never seen me like this. She didn't know what to do, and that's a parent's reaction, is I'm going to remove you from this and we'll go home and fix it and we'll talk about it if you go back. We were halfway driving back and I'd already disenrolled from school. And God said to me, we pulled in a gas station to get gas, and I told my mom I wanted to walk in the store and get some, M&Ms or something. And this angel appeared from nowhere. And there was nobody there. My mom looked. She could see me walking into the store to get the candy and walking out. There was no one there. This angel had appeared somewhere from that time I walked and got the candy and walked back towards the car and just started chatting with me about, you're going to make it. You're going to do it. And I'm like, huh, whatever. So I got in the car. We started driving, and I just started crying and said, Mom, you're going to think I'm crazy? Probably am. Stop the car. We got to turn around, go back to college. I got to re-enroll because I got to write that paper tonight. And I went home, back to college, my dorm. I wrote that paper, got an A+. God had unblocked my mind, and I went and did it. But if you just think about all the things, if we just stop and don't do it, or we get off track, or we whatever, all the lives that wouldn't be touched. And I always like to tell people, if you bring one person to Jesus Christ, Amen, you've already done his work.
Yep.
Because one life touches several lives, and several lives touch more lives. Mm-hmm. And that's why I said we're all meant to be together. We're not meant to be alone. We function so much better as a whole.
Amen.
Amen. Tammy, thank you so much for coming by and sharing your testimony.
Yep. It was my pleasure. Besides doing this and, writing blogs for New Vision, I try to write stories and help other parents through the same way that you're trying to reach listeners on the radio. It's a good purpose just to know that you're not alone in the world.
Amen.
And that there are people out there that want to help and really do care.
I was impressed when I first went to her house because I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I'm like, her house is cleaner than yours. And
Well, I
she's
don't know about
legally
that.
blind.
I try. I'm still missing the
And then
picture.
I saw that there was a pot on the stove, and I'm like, and she cooks. Oh my gosh.
That's fantastic. That's newvisionfl.org. NEWVISIONFL.org.
.org.
Well, that's session 25, Mikey.
That is 25. That's a nice round number.
It is a nice round number. We tried to not make it this long. We really did. On several occasions. I'm speaking for myself, Mikey.
Yeah.
And something Tammy said earlier was that if she had given up when she felt like giving up, she would have never touched the amount of people that she did, or had acquired the skills, just like the social worker skills to handle the situation with the cane and with crossing the boulevard and whatnot.
Right. And not only that, she came to the point where she said that now that she's out of not able to work and everything else, and she's home with the kids and everything else, what am I good for? A mom raising kids is one of the top things that God has the mother
Amen.
doing.
Yeah, but the hard thing about being a mom, if you've been in a life where, you go to a job and you get to accomplish tasks every day, you get the sense of completion. As a mom,
The work is never done.
the work's never done and you're never completed. And that's my uncomfortable zone. And God has to work with me on that every day. Because for everything that I say, I'm going to be more organized. I'm going to be on top of this. I'm going to do it all. I can't. And I fall short every day.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, there's no replacement for a mom's touch.
Nope.
Just ask my daughter. My Mr. Mom skills are just not
But-
there.
Yeah, my 2-year-old, when I would go out for my mobility lessons, and she's 2, she's going to be 3, in May, but she would say, like, Mommy, you go out with BB, that was my instructor. You go out and you're going to work with your cane. And, like, she's only 2, and she already knows it's a cane. She already knows the proper terminology.
Sorry.
And they listen. They really observe, and they listen to how you handle your life and yourself. And all the things where we feel flawed when we don't handle that good, they mimic it, too. They mimic the good and the bad. And I think that's what's amazing about God, where you can be at so many different junctures in your life where you're so frustrated and mad because you just fall short. And if you just every day ask God, lead me, help me, direct me, show me humbleness, show me to say to the kids or to whomever, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I could have done this better, I handled that poorly. That it's not a finished deal, because God can change hearts. He can change anything.
Amen. All right.
Session 25.
All done.
Thanks again, Tammy, for
You're
coming
welcome.
by.
Thank you
Thanks,
for having me.
Trish, for
Stopping in.
extending the invitation
Yes.
to her and her accepting.
her
and
accepting.
Thank
And
you so
driving her
much.
over
Yes.
here.
Driving
Yes.
her over, and get more information about New Vision at newvisionfl.org, or you can drop us a line at godstoriesradio@gmail.com, and we'll get information to you. Or on Facebook, Twitter. We twit back
tweet.
and forth. Huh?
Twit.
Twit.
Tweet.
Twit
We-
too?
Twit.
Twit.
Do we twit? I never know. I think it's tweet.
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 Tweet. It's
Tweet.
tweet.
I'm a twit. I don't know. But anyway, well, thank
It's
you
a
again,
thing.
Tammy. And that was session 25, and it's just been an incredible session, and we thank God for it.
Yes,
So
we do.
this has been God Stories Radio. I'm Fritz.
I'm Mike.
Trish.
And
God bless.
Kevin.
God bless.
You're tuned into the God Stories Radio Podcast. www.godstoriesradio.com.